Hello everybody, this is Michael Hollands for Sound of the Movies. Today I have the pleasure to be joined by Pulitzer Prize winning composer Michael Abels. Over the course of his career, Michael has shown his versatility writing concert music, an opera, and music for films such as Get Out, Us, Nope, Bad Education, Nightbooks, Breaking, The Burial, and more. It is my pleasure to welcome Michael Abels.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you on my show, Michael. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your schedule. I really appreciate that.
You're welcome.
And in 2017, Michael, you wrote your first film score for Jordan Peele's film called Get Out. Did you actually try to get into film music prior to Jordan contacting you? Was that a career path you had in mind, or was it a complete surprise?
I had always wanted to score film. I had actually wanted to write any kind of music for every medium you can imagine. But I had had no success in breaking into the film business. So I had basically thought that dream had ended before Jordan called me.
How has film music changed your life?
I'm now able to be a composer full time, which um, again I was a dream I had given up on. So it certainly changed my life in that regard. But it's also made me, I think, a better composer because the demands of writing for media um, give you a lot of chance to get a lot of input from other creative people, and you have to learn to write to enhance their vision and to tell stories. And you also have less time to get stuck in your own self-doubt. There is no time to do that. You simply have to move forward. And there's nothing like the practice of doing that to get you in the habit of approaching that creatively.
The scores you wrote for Jordan have been described as genre defying also. And I've seen the movies, of course, I've listened to the scores many times. Which quality do those scores possess to earn that characterization? What do you think sets them apart?
I think that on the one hand, there's an aspect of in each film to a greater or lesser degree, it's really scary. And so the music, they have all that in common, that there's music that's designed to really make the hair on the back of your neck stand up and make you uncomfortable and feel what the characters are experiencing. Um, but then also Jordan he likes to pay homage to other kinds of genres, or he sees ways in which certain genres of film fit together and blend together that other people don't. And so when he does that, the music needs to um, pay homage to those genres just as much as everything else about the film does. So in Nope, there's music that sounds like it's from a Western, both from a movie and from maybe a Western TV show even. Um, there's music in Us. There's the that horror reimagining of that 90s classic Got Five on It, which is a whole different, that's certainly genre defying if ever there was a piece of music like that. So the music takes the turns that are necessary to tell the story, which are unique in Jordan's world. And I would say that's why they would be called genre defying.
Thank you, Michael. And as I mentioned in my introduction, you not only write film scores, you have been writing concert music for many, many years, and you also wrote an opera called OMAR. And in terms of musical storytelling and structure, how would you describe your approach and the difference between writing music for an opera, concert work, and also the world of film scoring, Michael?
Well, in concert music, the composer really is the storyteller. I think that all music really takes a listener on a journey, and to that extent, it's telling a story. The story may be one that the listener makes up in his or her own head, but that's part of the joy of the experience. So, um, it's up in that world, it's up to me as the composer to figure out what the story is musically, not in a literal, you know, not in a literal way as if there's a script, but certainly you need to know whether the musical ideas are taking the right amount of time, if they're developing in a way that keeps people engaged. And if there's a shift, if that happens in a way that feels interesting and organic and musical. And these are all things that are um, that the com that that are controlled by choices the composer makes in the concert hall. In film and in media, those things are dictated by the story and by the way the story is shot and edited. And so in that way, you are off the hook and having to come up with those things yourself because that's being shown to you in the way the story is being told, and your job is to be a good participant rather than the sole creator. And opera is kind of in the middle. There's a way in which opera is absolutely a collaborative sport. In fact, I collaborated on the music even with Rhiannon Giddens, who's an amazing artist in her own right and a singer-songwriter. But we determined how the story would go. And as Rhiannon wrote the libretto, she was deciding, even though it was based on historical fact, there's still a way to tell a story that's very much the job of the storyteller. And then we were choosing how the music would end up expressing that story. But we were doing it with each other's collaboration. And then ultimately with the collaboration of the stage director who was bringing the visual element in. So each one of these media have their own collaborative or creative culture. And it's important to understand what that culture is so that you can, to create successfully in each of those, I think you first have to start by understanding the culture that it takes place in.
Thank you, Michael. And in terms of the film business and writing for film, what was your learning curve like going from Get Out to your most recent film called The Burial, starring Tommy Lee Jones and also Jamie Foxx?
Interesting. So a lot of it is that because it's a collaboration, a lot of your journey is getting to know your collaborators and getting to know what's important to them and getting to know what they like in music and the genres they like and what they listen for in music. And that's different every time. And so it's always a new process and you are going on a journey, but you don't know what the chapters of that journey are going to be until you start working with people. Um, but I think I've also learned how to score. I think I would like to think that I've improved over time as I do things. As much as I'm very proud of Get Out, there were ways in which one thing that Jordan did was he would play the cues that I wrote a little later than where I thought they would go. And when he was doing that, I was really surprised, and it felt like it wasn't in sync to me even. Um, but then he as he was doing that over time, he and the editor would say, "No, no, we like how it fits like this." And he was explaining to me that the audience needs to have a little time to interpret what they're seeing before the music kind of confirms what they're saying, what they're thinking about what they see. And I remember there was a day when I said to him, "Oh, you mean it's like thunder and lightning? You know, first the lightning and then the thunder." And that wasn't how, but somehow when I thought of that in what he was saying, it really transformed. I got a distinction that I didn't have before. And so ever since then, I'm always trying to, even while I'm always trying to understand the dramatic curve of a scene, I think that's about the single most important thing a composer can do after they understand what the director wants. Um, I'm always trying to have the music react much, much later than I used to at the beginning of my career. And it's surprising to watch my ability to do that grow and how now music that reacts in a much later way feels right to me as opposed to when I first began.
Communication is very important and essential, of course, and it can be verbal and also non-verbal. How do you find out what a collaborator or a director or producer once? Because I think that can be very tricky because we all resonate to different things. What's your experience like in that regard, Michael?
Well, you start by asking them and then really listening to the answer. It's talking about music is like, it's like dancing about architecture, I think someone said, meaning how you just don't, the language you have to use to describe the thing is not the thing. And so how there's got to be something lost in translation. And so people can say what it is they like, but they're using their own interpretation of what they think, and you have to both hear what they say and listen past what they say to what they mean. And what they mean might be different than what they say, um, because people feel, even whether people feel like they have a musical background or not, it's difficult to talk about music and it's difficult to talk about emotions even. Um, so I try to listen to them and I try to get what I think the meaning is out of what they say, and then I ask for feedback. Give it my best, um, give it my best interpretation, and then I ask for feedback and see how I did. And part of that is it's I'm familiar with that's the process, but with each person, it's going to be a different process. And I may guess, I may get it right the first time, but I may guess wrong, even though I felt like I was executing what they asked for, to the letter. Um, so I think that communication is the journey that you have when you're collaborating with a showrunner or a director.
Thank you. And in terms of the burial, the film contains between 30 and 40 minutes of music. How did you discuss with the film's director, Maggie Betts, as to which scenes should have music and as to which scenes should play without music, perhaps?
I think that, well, first there was a temp score, and temp is um on the one hand, it's never correct. It's never perfectly correct because it was music from something else that someone has borrowed to put into a situation. But it is great in two ways, in that it gives you some idea of what a filmmaker and their editor thinks would work in the scene. Um, and the other thing it does is it shows you where they think the music goes. Because if you watch a film with no music, you might conclude music goes in a certain place. But then where the temp goes, you're always surprised sometimes where there isn't any music, where I watch the scene and I hear music in my head versus places where I would have played it dry and they have put in score. And so just those examples become places where you can talk to a director about it. Hey, how is this temp working for you? Or why did you choose not to have music in this scene? And so we talked about all those things. But the thing that Maggie was clear from the beginning that she wanted an orchestral score, a more old-fashioned, old-school kind of score for the film, for a couple of reasons. One is that there's a lot of um, um, 90s hits in the score in the film, and those are used to create a particular vibe. One, because the film takes place in an earlier era, and also because it really kind of gets you in the vibe of who the characters are. And so we wanted to contrast all those songs from the score. So that was one great way to do it, is have the score be in a totally different genre. But another reason was that it's a story that's you it being named The Burial, you would kind of have assumptions about what it's about, and it's a courtroom drama, and it sounds very stuffy. But in fact, it's a really fascinating, interesting, relevant story to today. And it's got a lot of chapters in it. You got to understand how these different things work together. And it's a little like peeling an onion, it unwraps slowly until you get to the core of what it's about. So the music is used to show you, oh, here's an important clue, just what these people are saying. It's not like someone's finding a dropped napkin or something like a clue like that. But when people are talking, there's a clue to something bigger. And the music, by being used the way it does, gives you this sense of, oh, this is going to relate later. And so there are these themes that come back that go, remember that? that thing relates to this thing. And the score is really helping do that. And then the last thing I think is that in the very first cut of the film, Maggie began with a version of a piece by Bach called Jesu Joy of Man's Desiring. And if you're a Bach fan, you know that piece because it's one of his most famous. And she chose it. I mean, it's a great piece, but the reason she chose it was because it is a piece that's often played at funerals. And the burial is about a funeral home director, even though there are no funerals in the burial. But she just felt like that was a really great way to begin. And so the theme that I wrote for the burial is actually inspired by a Jesu Joy of Man's Desiring, although you wouldn't know it because it's inverted and it's much more contemporary sounding. But at the very end, in the credits, I arranged a version of Jesu Joy of Man's Desiring, and I put the theme from the burial inside it. I wove it into Jesu Joy of Man's Desiring so that you can hear what the inspiration was from.
Yeah, and it's a great movie, and I enjoy a good courtroom drama anyway. And I think
Oh, great.
it's so mesmerizing, and the performances are really spot on. Especially Jamie Foxx as the lawyer. He's just magnificent, and Tommy Lee Jones is always a pleasure to watch anyway. So it's very good. And Michael, how do you get inspired by an actor's or actress's performance?
Well, it's really easy. I mean, just the way, I mean, and you said, I feel exactly the same way about those actors in that film. Jamie Foxx is just at his very best. And he's so appealing and likable and watchable, and he just owns every frame he's in. I often, in a great scene in a movie, I often just hear music in my head. The score will just present itself. And my job, I feel like, is to capture, assuming that that music is also something the director's interested in, is just kind of transcribing the music that I already hear when I watch the film, and a performance like Jamie Foxx's definitely does that. But the other thing is that sometimes a performance is so perfect that sometimes there's nothing music can do. For example, one of the first scenes with Jamie Foxx is this really great monologue he has in the courtroom, which is about another case, not the case that we're about to see. It's us getting to know who he is, and we meet him and we watch him in action in the court. And I don't that shot. It may have been all one shot. Not only is it a several paragraph monologue, but it might be all filmed all in one shot too. And originally, Maggie had a great piece of temp there that was classical music, and so what it was providing was it was saying that what you're watching is a masterpiece. That's what the music was saying, is that, and he was playing the jury like he was a conductor of a great orchestra. He was absolutely giving a performance that was a masterpiece, and the music was saying that. But the thing was is that also you didn't even need the music to get that. It was so good. So I didn't write. It was temped, but we didn't write anything for that scene because ultimately playing it with no music, it still works so great. Um, so that's a place where I was very inspired by him, and I had no chance to contribute to that particular scene. But then other scenes that are more intimate and smaller, I was able to help tell that story with music, and hopefully did his performance proud as well.
When do you like to get involved, or when do you need to get involved with a new project? Do you like to read scripts? Do you, let's say, talk to the director or the producer at first? Do you prefer watching a rough cut of the film? What is the best possible scenario for you personally as a musician and composer?
It depends on the project. Like, the thing about reading scripts is that it helps you join the director's journey early on. Everybody who's in production, that means everybody who's on set kind of has this shared group experience of they're all in it together, and every day they're working toward this shared goal, and it's a huge bonding experience. And and the composer gets none of that. The composer is because music takes place in time. Time is the canvas of music. And until a scene takes place in time, you can only do so much. Like if you can read a script, but what you can't really tell in a script is you can't tell if the scene you're reading is going to end up taking, 10 seconds or 30 seconds or a minute and a half. And you can tell by how much dialogue there is in it. But nonetheless, um, a lot of the scenes in a film that require the most music and are really great musical opportunities don't have much dialogue, so they don't take up much room in a script. And you can't really tell if a director is going to linger on this beautiful establishing moment that really communicates visually and sonically, or whether they're going to jump quickly past that because the film needs the pace. You can't tell that until you see it. And so even though it's great to read a script and feel like you're on the team, the time that it's really time, and you can also do some demos, and that can really help you get on the same page with the director early on. So those are valuable, but you can't do work that's actually going to go into the film usually until there's some kind of cut, and you can start to see scenes take place in time. Um, and the other part about that answer is for example, Jordan Peele really likes when I don't write to picture. So even though I'm telling you the value of the rough cut, Jordan very much likes to have me just write based on the ideas of the film. And then I send him I've stopped even saying what scene I think it goes in, because part of the process is I mean, he's both writer and director of the project. So therefore, if the music is working, he'll be the first one to know. And he doesn't need me to tell him what scene it goes in. So he'll just take music that he likes that I've done and he'll put it in a scene. And I kind of look forward to what scene he thinks it goes in, because it isn't always the one that I think it goes in, but it helps me get to know how he's seeing the characters and hearing the story. Um, so and then another filmmaker isn't ready for music until the rough cut because they have too much else going on to be able to even think about music. So it just shows you the differences in people kind of necessitate different ways of working, and it's productive in different ways depending on how each person works.
In terms of, let's say, an opportunity that a certain project presented, or in terms of a filmmaker such as Jordan or Maggie, or in terms of music itself, or maybe even how much fun the project was, what do you think was a career defining moment for you? Was it a film score or your Pulitzer Prize winning opera, or maybe even a concert work? What comes to mind?
So I don't think there's one single one. And ultimately, I hope there's one in each project I do. I mean, I can think of there's a concert piece I wrote called Urban Legends, which on its premiere, I didn't feel like a lot of people appreciated it as much as I was hoping. But that's the feedback you get sometimes with work. Your work is people are like, okay, but not that one, something else. So, however, that piece was one that that was the one that Jordan Peele heard that made him want to hire me. And and then 2 films later, he actually used some music from that piece in Nope. And um, so little did I know when Urban Legends premiered, and it didn't seem like a career defining moment, what a career defining moment it actually was. Um, and I had always wanted to write an opera my whole adult life, and to be asked by Rhiannon to collaborate and have that piece premiere successfully and be performed in several different cities and then go on to win the Pulitzer Prize. I mean, I don't even think I imagined something like that because it's just so rare. And it's definitely a career defining moment. And yet in each opportunity I've had, there have been moments that have inspired me and excited me, and I hope have made me a better artist going forward. And so those are just a few examples of things.
Thank you. And I know we don't have that much time left, but could you please tell me a detail or two about the Composers Diversity Collective, how it was created, and the goal behind it, Michael?
Thanks. So the composers the Composers Diversity Collective is designed to um, raise the profile and increase visibility of composers of color in the media industry. And there are more opportunities, or there have been certainly in the last few years, for composers who um, are from different parts of the world or from different cultural backgrounds to tell stories that are unique to their experiences. And so, but like any business of relationships, it's hard to meet the right people. And so, when Get Out became very successful, um, I would go to industry events and notice other composers of color, and we would say, as people do, we should hang out. And people don't always follow through on that intention, but we all just said, let's make it happen and let's pick a time and place. And we did that. We had over 50 people show up to our first event, and now we've been around for coming up on our 5-year anniversary, and we have over 100 members, and we have a website where people can go and listen to music of our members, and hopefully people who are looking for a composer of a certain background or a specific type that they wouldn't have found through their regular network, they can come to us and we can help hook them up with if people in the industry want to be diverse and inclusive in their hiring, we want to make sure that that can be a little easier for them.
Great. And before we wrap up for today, Michael, are you at liberty to disclose a thing or two about your upcoming project called the American Society of Magical Negroes?
Yes, that that film is being released in March. I want to say March 22nd, and it just premiered at Sundance, where what I could tell, a friend of mine played me some of the audience reaction. It sounded like it was very favorable. It's extremely clever film. To explain the setup, it takes more time than we may have. But the idea is that the magical Negro is a trope, a cinematic trope that was defined in those terms by Spike Lee, I think, and which is the black character who sometimes actually is literally magical, but whose purpose in the story is not to be the star, but to help the white people in the story get what they want. And the magical Negro does that through being a really good friend and being supportive at the right time, and or using magical powers. And there are a few films from the 90s that he did that very successfully. So in this movie, which is by Kobe Libby, who's an amazing writer director and the greatest guy and so funny and smart, he imagines that what if that was a real thing, that there really were magical Negroes. And so our young protagonist, Aaron, is an artist who's not doing well, and he's a little down on his luck and his art. And he's seen by this older black man who we see as the bartender at an art event. And he recruits Aaron into what is the secret society of magical Negroes. And Aaron is trained in the magic of the magical Negroes so that he can help white people feel okay. So Aaron, reluctantly and a little skeptically, is inducted into the society, learns the magic, and then he's put back in his regular life. He works for a Meatbox. Meatbox is a startup that's sort of a tech startup that's had a little diversity problem with its facial recognition software. And his assignment is to help his coworker, Jason, land the girl he wants. And of course, as fate would have it, Aaron has just met the same girl that Jason likes. And so then it's a little bit like Cyrano de Bergerac. And will our hero help his friend, the white guy, get what he wants because that's his job as a magical Negro? Or will he follow his heart and go for the girl himself? And so it's a comedy, it's a satire. And people, because of its title, which is pretty cheeky, people are having a little trouble with that. But it's really funny and smart. So anyway, that's the setup, and I hope people go see it because it's a lot of fun.
Michael, I believe we are out of time for today. Thank you very much for taking the time out of your schedule. I really appreciate that. And I really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope you did too.
Thank you. This was great. Thanks very much, Michael.
Thank you very much. Take care, and let's talk soon. Bye.